Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Lead Analyst Logan Mohtashami to talk about housing data heading into the spring housing market and what we could expect on inventory and prices. Before we begin, I want to thank our sponsor, Trust and Will, for making this episode possible. Logan, welcome back to the podcast.
It is wonderful to be here, Madam President. I am here to serve and give as many chart information as possible.
Oh my gosh, I have definitely gotten some feedback. It's very funny. Thank you all. Thank you all for your comments. Okay, so we have a pretty exciting thing to talk about today, and that's the spring home selling, home buying market. I just think of it as like the spring housing market, but we're coming into a spring housing market that hopefully we're better prepared for than we have been for the last couple of years. So would love to talk to you about what you're looking for in this spring.
So this is going to be about prices going into the spring season. So, and for all of you that are HousingWire subscribers, now we have HousingWire Intelligence.
Yes.
Right. You could go in there, kind of the tracker data line sets or any kind of data line sets you want there. If you wanted a visual on what's going on now, you have access to it. Your charts 24/7. Oh my God, Logan 24/7, charts 24/7, spreads 24/7. It's great. So I encourage everyone to go in there and kind of play with the charts and take a look at everything. Of course, it's different with the Altos part of our business where we actually give you a very deep, detailed look, and then you can give it to your customers and clients. But HousingWire Intelligence will be open to all subscribers. But now we're going to talk about prices going into 2026. And then I always say that one of the reasons why I ask people for their forecasts and their models is I always want to back test people to see if they're legitimate. And 99.9% people aren't legitimate because they want to get attention and do important sales. But in this regards, if you look at total active inventory in America right now on a historical basis, it looks still very low on that site. Monthly supply is not over 6 months. If you actually take the 1996 post model in the past, people used to say, well, if monthly supply is under 6 months, prices never fall. In theory, they are correct with that, but we like to give a little bit more detailed information because there are parts of the country where prices are falling and parts are higher. But in general context, that was the old model. Now we're in a what we call a post-QM world. Qualified mortgage came in 2010. So the supply and demand equilibrium gets a little bit more interesting. But going back to 2024 price forecast was 2.33%. It's a little bit lower than everyone else's. And we do this tracker every single weekend so everyone can get a sense of what's really going on, like with real live fresh data, not just inventory, but inventory, sales, rates, everything. So I thought I was going to be right in 2024 because I never revised my forecast. I just let the tracker tell me if I'm right or wrong. But I knew when mortgage rates were getting down towards 6%. And I knew I was going to be wrong with my price forecast because our forward-looking data was getting better and our pricing was firming in the second half of the year, which rarely is the case, but it did. We ended up 4% for the year, so wrong on that. But then we went into 2025 with kind of an elevated level of year-over-year growth, and I'm like, okay, 2025 forecast 1.77%. That's a little bit lower. This is back-to-back negative real home prices. I know you don't like negative real home prices. Why don't you like negative real home prices, Sarah?
I think because it doesn't make sense to me if prices are going up, but you're like, but real home prices are different than that.
I know. I tell you, in 2019, I did a economic throwdown summit with Jessica, Dr. Laus from the NAR, and Stephen Thomas from Orange County, and a professor. And I talked about negative real home prices and I had this bigger, and there's a picture of me too, where it just,
I'm sure there is.
Chart and I go, this is great news. And everybody looked at me like there was like two demon heads on my shoulders or something. Like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, nominal home prices are up, but it's just, adjusting to inflation. You could CPI inflation or rent inflation, however you want to use it. Prices are down just on that. But now, back in 2025, I thought, because rates were elevated and inventory was up again, right? Inventory is up again, supply and demand equilibrium. We want to teach this, how it's done properly since the Peloponnesian War. So we can be the detective, not the troll. in that context, the year-over-year data needed to get really softer for me to be right. And it was getting softer. I just thought what happened last year is that a lot of inexperience, a lot of people saw the month-to-month data being slightly negative and just went with that as it's 2008, it's worse than 2008. And then a lot of people assumed like there was this massive amount of inventory, like we had more sellers than history. And all of a sudden they ran with the seasonal weakness in pricing in 2025. And so many people talk about year-over-year declines. And what happened this last week? Case-Shiller, FHFA, December report, 1.8% FHFA, 1.3% Case-Shiller. The curve got better when, Sarah? When did the housing market change?
Starting mid-June last year.
Mid-June. And now we are here going into spring. So what do we know reading the tracker data, reading the HousingWire intelligence that people will have access to? The growth rate of inventory has slowed a lot from that period of time last year. Last year, we were at 33%, and now the last number was just a tad under 10%. But it's still up. So 2026 forecast for me, negative 0.62%. So it's a very small decline on a nominal basis, but so my thinking was that we're going to get another round of inventory, and I wasn't kind of into the rate being lower to start the year camp. And what is one thing that changed when the year started, Sarah?
Well, we've had lower interest rates.
We've had lower interest rates, but we had one variable that came in: mortgage spreads, right?
Oh, yes.
And they made that announcement, and all of a sudden the spreads got, like, traders got very ahead of the curve. So mortgage spreads got a little bit better. Now, I was looking for it to get back to normal, but toward the end of the year, not early. So I've already lost that rate variable. Why is that important? Because what's happened is that the growth rate of inventory has slowed and demand has picked up. If you read the tracker weekly pending sales data, we had a little slowdown on the snow, but that looks out 30 to 60 days. A lot of people saw the purchase application data. They said purchase application data is down. This is not true. It's actually positive year over year every single week this year. And we're not working from a low bar. So the price cut percentage has fallen on a year over year basis. That hasn't happened in a while. So it doesn't look like my forecast is going to be right if that continues and demand picks up even more going out. So this is something that we all keep a track of because we have good history with this: late 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. And if you can teach the supply and demand equilibrium, right, then everyone starts to understand it, because it's very rare in history for inventory to go vertical, that you would have such a spike in inventory with no demand or demand falling. That did happen in one period of time in recent history. That was 2005 to 2008, right? And you had distressed sales ready to come on the system. That was an anomaly in the history of U.S. economics right there. 100 years go by. That hardly ever happens, but that was a credit boom, credit bust. Now it's very nitty gritty. It's just like, just like in a mud fight trying to get all the data. But that's what the tracker is designed to do, to clear up. And now everyone, you could get it for your own zip code, your city, and everything. You could be ahead of the curve on everyone else. And then you could ignore all the noise out there. And that's the beauty of numbers, Sarah. Why do we love numbers?
Yes, because you say they're the closest thing to the handwriting of God, right? Isn't that your
yes?
That's
your
the phrase.
Closest thing to the handwriting of God.
So I really love that you're bringing up the HousingWire intelligence, because this is a really big difference. This is a big deal. We've had all this data. We're now packaging that data in a way that people can access really easily. That's very particular to them. And if you guys are not subscribers, go to housingwire.com, become a subscriber. There's so many benefits. One of them, you get to read the tracker every week and you can see all of it and all this broken out. But Logan, I wanted to ask you about that price cut percentage that we look at every single week. We know that last year it got as high as 40%, that homes that went on the market.
Over 40%, yes.
Over that homes on the market had to take a price cut before they sold. And now we're down to like 30%. So that's a pretty big difference.
Well, here's the thing: the price cut percentage data is also seasonal. It kind of has the seasonal
Okay.
decline going into the spring season, and then it has its seasonal increase. So the year over year data becomes valuable in analyzing that. A really good example. So when we do our tracker articles, if you could see what do we love about the tracker, the slope of the curve, right?
Yep.
So what happened was 2022 was crazy. Like 2022 was like three housing cycles put into 1 year. It was like a
It was
Shakespearean
awful.
play. It was like I'm going to go to my grave thinking that was just absolutely nuts. But if you're a data person, you're just like, wow, you got to really get that. And we were at a teenager level in early 2022. That was the savagely unhealthy housing market. That was in February, where I said, we got to blow this thing up because this is going to have another 18 to 20% year if rates don't go up higher. But when rates shot up as much as the slope of that curve, the price cut percentage really accelerated high, because we went from 3% to 7% all in 1 year. So everybody that was in the marketplace was like, whoa, 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 things had to move fast. But then what happened is in the second half of 2022, new listings data, which is very seasonal as well, it started to decline on a year-over-year basis. A lot of people said, I'm not going to do it in this marketplace. And it makes sense if you believe that 70 to 80% of home sellers are buyers. So
Right.
what I was really happy about with the tracker articles the last 2 weeks is that the new listings data has picked up again. Right? Weekly pending contracts picked up again. We have year over year growth in pending contracts, and we have year over year growth in new listings. Purchase application data on a year over year basis 2 weeks ago, 8% year over year growth, 12%. So we're getting the flow of the data. And of course, every city, every state, every zip code, my job is to teach the economics, because all housing data revolves around general economic movement, which is really what the 10-year yield and the spread is doing. This is why we want to teach everybody all of it together so it can make sense. So going into this year, it's really going to see how much can inventory grow. Are there going to be some weeks that we see negative inventory? I know there's parts of Florida that inventory is down year over year, but is that going to happen in the national data? If you look at the slope of the curve and rates now 6% this morning, there are going to be some periods where we might have negative year over year inventory, but we are elevated. We're no longer in that 2022 or 2023 market or 2024 market. 2025 and 2026, that's the inventory channel that we're working with, right? And then we're going to see what rates and demand and everything. And remember, this thing looks out in the forward. We're going to be like 2-3 months ahead of the NAR. We're always going to be 3 to 6 months ahead of the Case-Shiller index. So this way we get an idea. But so far this year, very normal year, but better because it's buyers versus sellers. Right? Logan doctrine, balance, right? We go into this a fight, right? A legit fight between sellers and buyers. And then when that seller sells a house, that seller then becomes a buyer, then deals with a seller on all sides. And it's this beautiful symphony, like a Hans Zimmer symphony of housing economics. And you can get the tracker every weekend. You can listen to our podcast. Now you got HousingWire Intelligence. You got Altos data. You have so much access, where 2,000 years ago, the chart daddy had a really, really long white beard, and they put me in a dungeon. I was reading scrolls, and there wasn't no TikTok or Instagram or anything like this. It wasn't a lot of fun. They sometimes give me some bread and water, on occasion, but it's such an exciting time to be alive with all this access to data out here.
I think what we see too, first of all, hilarious, that whole description. But also, I think what I see where people get it wrong, we know that there are, doomers who will always get it wrong. What I see is that the mainstream press that might be accurate on other things when it comes to housing, because they don't have the background, because they don't have that full picture of all the things you're talking about, they'll see one data line and they run with it and say all these things that you're like, that's just not right. And it's good for people in our industry to know these things from you, from this podcast, from the tracker, so that they can interpret it for all their clients who are seeing that mainstream message of like whatever that might be.
Yeah, and this is why the tracker was. Remember how I was like, oh, we're gonna start the tracker. It's November, December of 2022. Things are changing. We need to, But a really good example is, we see these articles from time to time. Oh my God, a loan that was that created the housing bubble crisis is back into vogue. So the author of the article, Wall Street Journal, or something like that, where would say this ARM product is something that created the housing bubble crash back then. Well, they just don't have the background to know that after qualified mortgage, those
Right.
things are all gone. They are not coming back, nor will they or can they come back. So if the person knew what qualified mortgage was, he wouldn't make that statement. So it's interesting because the ARM loan rates are actually coming, in the low fives for some products. So now people have access to that. So again, our job is to take the numbers and try to make it sense. And that's what the tracker is here to do for all of you to read. But now you can go to HousingWire Intelligence and you can get your own Altos data for your own area. And this is the beauty. Just follow the data, follow the numbers, forget the person, forget the individual. A person should be modeled based on their own models on what they're talking about. And that's the slope of the curve out here. So I think it's a good, great, healthy tug of war going into spring. And I'm really excited because rates are lower, inventory's up, price growth is cooling down, and it's an authentic battle for something that is just simply shelter.
You know what, Logan? I love when we can talk about how, things are getting back to normal, or we're heading into a really busy home buying season with good data, with good demand, with good inventory, or at least with average or normal inventory. So this is a very positive story, in my opinion, especially compared to the last couple of years.
Slow and steady wins the race, Setter.
It
Slow and
does.
steady wins the race, right? Balance is a good thing in that regard. So hopefully now, with all the data that everyone gets to see and reads the charts, it starts to make more and more sense. And I'm so glad to find out that, the team hire rate model actually worked. And now buyers feel like they could get in there and not, be totally bully balled around by sellers anymore.
Love it. Okay, well, we're going to end there. I will talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.